Nadav, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Nastos. Great to be here.
It is awesome to have you on. I have been waiting for this conversation for a little while.
Same here.
Great to have you here. Tell me a little bit before we dive into your business experience, how you got involved with EF and your investment. Tell me a little bit about, the story of Nadav before the business life. Talk to me about your experiences in the Israeli army and what sort of character traits you developed over the course of your 10 years there.
Okay, so it's not, I'm Israeli. I was born in Israel. Maybe here having a military background is special or unusual, but for somebody growing up in Israel, it's normal. That's what you do. Instead of going to university when you're 18, you apply to the military, you go through several tests. And I think for me personally, because I served as a pilot, and in Israel at the time, maybe 20, 25 years ago, it was considered, maybe still is considered to be the most difficult and the most prestigious thing to do, to be a pilot. I think that this is the first kind of formative experience of applying and trying to do the best that I can, to go to a path that just few will succeed. I don't know, maybe 30,000 people make an application and only 600 are being selected for 1 week selection week, and then only 300 start and then only 600 finish. So it's a very kind of competitive experience for me as an 18-year-old guy.
And when you kind of look back at your career path after that, there is also quite a lot of common stories here in the UK where a lot of people have gone to Sandhurst or some of the military academies and come out and done, exceptional things in business and in finance, etc. Do you see the qualities that you built in that stint as being an important part of what you've done afterwards?
I actually don't see a lot of people coming out of military necessarily here. I think that here, actually, to go to the best thing that you can do, you go to university. So for me, it's more similar to living kind of elite unit in the army. It's more akin to living Oxford or Cambridge in the UK. So this is for me the right parallel, if you want to draw the parallel between the two countries.
And then after your experience in the military, you went off traveling. Tell me about where you went, what you did, what you got up to in the period of time after that.
It's also, we can speak more about the army because I think that part of kind of exceptionalism, military gives you a lot of things, and it gives you a lot of handicaps. So on the positive side of military, I think you get a lot of responsibility from very early on, because there is no other way. You need to lead, you need to make big decisions, and I think you get used to the fact that you can make big decisions. Also in Israel, which is a very non-hierarchical organization, you learn early on to break things up. They tell you are the commander in the field. You're gonna make a decision. We don't know back here in headquarters what's the right thing to do. You need to make the decision and then explain what you did. And I think that this gave me this confidence to do things and not wait for an approval. Just go and do it and see what's gonna happen. I think it's super positive, but the other side of it is that when you start to go to organizations that are less distributed or more hierarchical, we can go back to my first business experience at McKinsey, which is a complete disaster. I didn't realize that you do need to ask for permission at times, and you need to do what people are asking you to do. So this is kind of one thing. And the other thing that I think that military is a very simplistic organization. It's black and white. There are good people, there are bad people, and obviously now sitting here, I can tell you that no one is good and no one is bad. It's very, very confusing, but in the army itself, you always have this kind of the bad guys and the good guys, and you don't have many dilemmas. Getting into business, everything is what I call co-opetition. You are competing with your competitors, but you're also cooperating with them. You are cooperating with people that you're working with, but you're also competing with them. It's not very clear who's a friend, who's a foe. It's very confusing, and I actually think that a lot of people coming out of military find it very hard to succeed in the more fluid, more gray, more confusing business environment, if it helps. Traveling, you're asking about traveling. It's also something that you do in Israel. It's almost like you're...
like a rite of passage. Like
totally. You go to high school, you go to the army, you go traveling, And if you survive all these things, then you can go to university. So people start university in Israel in a very old age. I had a long military career. I think I left the army when I was 25, so it's after 7 years in the military, maybe 26. And then I went traveling in Israel. Everyone's traveling. You either go to South America at the time or to India. I went to South America, just traveled, and for a long time. A couple of months in Peru, I learned Spanish. A couple of months in Colombia, I learned to be a dive master and learned to play the guitar. I'm pretty lousy at that. I learned to play chess. Then I decided that I need to do something crazy, so I decided to cross Central America on a bicycle on my own. At that time, it made sense to me. Now less so. And then ended up in Guatemala for 1 year as a bartender. My first business experience, if you like. And I think I learned a lot from that about business, actually, funnily enough.
What did you learn? What things did you pick up from that experience?
I learned, first of all, I learned to sell. I learned to speak with people as a bartender. You have a business and you open the bar. I mean, it was an afternoon bar, kind of sunset bar on the Pacific Ocean, and I was the bartender, salesperson to an extent. People would come, and you need to sell them, and you start to recognize a pattern that people like to be listened to. So the best thing to do with people, if you want to sell them something, is just to ask them questions and ask for wait for their answers. So the more they speak, the more they like you. I almost took it as my principle in business later on. It's all about asking questions. It's less about, I mean, you need to know to talk the talk, and you need to be quick on your feet. People mostly appreciate if you ask them questions and you let them talk and tell you their stories. And I think it's sounds quite simple, but this is a big lesson that I've learned and I picked up back in a small town in Guatemala.
I want to go into sort of your sales secrets because you're definitely known as the king of commerce around here, Nadav. So we'll go into that. But before we do, where did the idea to join McKinsey come from? I remember you telling a story in one of the fireside chats a couple of weeks ago where you said, you were sitting on a beach and one day it sort of just came to you that that's what I want to do. That's my next step. Tell me like where that kind of came from, what that lightning bolt was, and then why you feel the experience didn't really work out. You touched on it a little bit before.
So I give I give many versions. I'll give you the real version. So it didn't happen on the beach in Guatemala. I came back to Israel.
Yeah.
And I did meet a couple of very successful business people in Guatemala. One person that arrived, he was a chess player. He just sold his hedge fund. That was the first time I heard about bonds and stocks, and I remember he explaining me and that was kind of the first time that it's interesting what this guy is doing. Then I met an ex-banker from Goldman. He was the youngest partner at Goldman after before the IPO. And he retired in Guatemala, opened a beautiful hotel there, and kind of got people in. And he was kind of sort of a mentor. His name was Bruce. He passed away unfortunately 2 years ago. And it's somebody that kind of introduced me to the business world. He introduced me to another successful business person. So I kind of they seeded the seeds. Which I didn't really understand back in the day. I didn't really understand how successful they were. Now when I look at them and I know, oh wow, I know what they did. But back then it was like people that I met. Mm-hmm. I had long hair. I was playing the guitar. I was very not very savvy. Then I came back to Israel. I went to study mathematics because that's what you do. My father was a PhD in physics. So obviously I needed to be a mathematician and physicist. And I went to university. It was a disaster. I hated it. I hated it, but it's like it wasn't for me. I dropped physics very quickly. I did math, and then there was a war. 2006 war, Israel. They're calling me back to the army, and I hated it. And after the war, I just wanted to do something else. I didn't know exactly what to do. To go back to university, to go back to the army, and the whole idea of business school came about. Just kind of go to business school, and I heard from a friend from the military that McKinsey loves Israeli pilots. We can talk about that later, why. And then that in order to get to McKinsey, you need to go to business school. And there is a business school in France. Its name is INSEAD. They also love Israelis. And you should go there. It doesn't matter if you have an undergrad, not undergrad, just go there, get your degree, go to McKinsey. And then I became very mission orientated. I said, okay, no problem. I'm going to get into INSEAD. I'm going to get into McKinsey. I looked at their website, fantastic firm, traveling the world, making decisions. I completely drank the Kool-Aid and I said, okay, I want to be there. I didn't even know, I didn't know anything.
But it wasn't for you in the end. So you got in and it wasn't, for some reason, it wasn't quite the right fit. At least that's the way you've articulated it before. What do you think it was?
I didn't understand the job. I thought that McKinsey give advice to CEOs. And I was obviously very overconfident and naive. And I said, okay, they want me in to give advice to CEO. I didn't know I need to do a model or a presentation or work all-nighter. I mean, it's not for me. I'm like 31, 32-year-old, major. For my experiences, know nothing. I hardly spoke English. I mean, I cannot write an email that. So it was a big clash of cultures. I really struggled. I really struggled to understand my role there. Obviously, they struggled to understand my role there, so it wasn't the right fit.
But it worked out because I think the next step was Groupon, right? So how did the Groupon role come about, and how did you find yourself being sort of the lead of expansion or growth for the UK and Ireland?
So McKinsey are very clever in the way they help you to move on, and they give me some time to figure things out. I have to say it to their credit that they give you time to think and figure out things. And then just through a friend from INSEAD that told me that there is this small startup going on, and it sounded interesting, and it was in London, so I went to meet the founder, and he told me, great, forget about McKinsey, come work for us. And he asked me, where can you start? And I said, oh, whenever. He said, okay, come tomorrow. And that's how I joined Groupon. It was completely like, it was a 15 minutes job interview with one of the founders of Rocket Internet, Mark Zamber. And this is kind of the famous, my famous joke about my negotiation skills when I said, okay, I'm going to join tomorrow, but I want a computer. And he said, yeah, sure, you'll have your computer. And I actually got my computer. I was very pleased at the time.
Yeah, I'm sure you were. What skills did you pick up during that period, and how did it then fuel what you did, which I imagine was probably a similar role at Taboola afterwards, yes, where you were doing growth, expansion, opening up a product to new territories, to new markets?
So at Groupon, it was definitely B2B sales and sales management. That was the two things that I picked up. B2B, running around Leeds, Sheffield, Bradford, Newcastle, Edinburgh. You just name it in the north of the country, just running around in restaurants, hairdressers, beauty salons, and try to convince these people to do business with Groupon. You need to explain them what is Groupon, why it's a good idea, why do they need to give 80% discount, and you need to do it with a thick Israeli accent, 6'3", Middle Eastern appearance. I mean, so you learn a lot about B2B sales, and definitely that was the formative kind of experience of doing business. And the second one is management. And again, coming from a role of a military leader, where people don't question you, right? I mean, you have the rank and you have your experience, it's very clear, and suddenly you hire people, they question you, they show up to work, they don't show up to work. Sometimes they tell you the truth, sometimes they don't tell you the truth, sometimes they resign in the middle of the group. So it's definitely sales, B2B sales and sales management. That's in hindsight, I realized that it was also the first time I experienced hyper growth. By the time I didn't know what it means because it was the first time I did anything. So it was okay, that's normal, that's how it works. So I didn't realize that I'm learning about hyper growth and coping with change, with uncertainty, with drawbacks, etc.
And did you get deeper experience in those areas at Taboola in your next role, or were you learning different skills along the way as well?
I think Taboola was the first time when it was definitely on the same vein, but taking it to the next level. Was very one of the first few senior employees. I was the first employee outside of the US and Israel. So I was quite senior, and at first I started participating also in the board meetings. I had to open an office. It was almost like being my own version of entrepreneurship. I had to find an office, hire people, hire an accountant, incorporate the European entity. So it was much broader general management entrepreneurial skills, learned about product and bigger deals, right? I mean, a deal that you close with the Daily Mail, several million pounds, it's a different deal to something that you close with a restaurant. So I learned more about contract negotiation. So it's similar, but different. I also learned more about the media space, kind of publishers, advertisers. Yeah.
What are your tips for founders listening in who don't consider themselves natural salespeople? Because it seems it's something, if you look at the thread of your career, that you've had an affinity for. You've picked up things as you've gone along, but you've definitely developed that skill set a lot. What advice would you give to people who are looking to develop that skill set and don't necessarily feel like they're natural born salespeople?
So I don't know if I'm a natural born salesperson. I remember as a young kid going out with a friend of mine, picking up cactus fruit. In Israel, you have a lot of cactus fruit, and we picked up, I think, 300 and 400 cactus fruit, and then we wanted to put a stand. It's like the lemonade famous story that you do in the US. So I wanted to sell cactus fruit. So we picked up the 400 and we didn't sell anyone because I was very shy and I didn't want to sell anything. So we just ate all of them over a couple of weeks. So I don't think I'm a natural born salesperson. But what I would say is the following. A, being a founder, you are a salesperson by definition. And if you don't understand that or you don't acknowledge that, then you're making a big mistake. You sell to employees or to your co-founder to come and join you. You have to sell them the concept. You have to sell them the ideas. You, Nassos, you sell people the opportunity to come and speak to you on the podcast. We always sell when you are an entrepreneur. So your employees, obviously you need to sell to investors to give you money and capital, and you need to sell to clients. So by definition, you are a salesperson. I think this is the first tip that I would give. Recognize that you are a salesperson. You need to be a salesperson, and don't. People are not. Sales is not something bad. You naturally do it. Every successful founder is great at sales. The second thing is that it's not like in the movies. You don't go to a meeting and you give a presentation and you shake hands and you threat people and you do tactics. It doesn't work like that in real life. Sales is just doing a lot of work, doing a lot of background work, understanding where your client is coming from, asking a lot of questions, and trying to really solve people's problems. You know, if you want to recruit somebody, really believe that you give a good job to that person or great product to your client, or it's a good opportunity for your investors. It's really to care about whomever you're selling something to.
So in the next chapter of your career, you became interested in the crypto space. You also become an investor. You've invested in a number of companies. Tell me a little bit about how you got involved in that space, and also then the EF ecosystem. Now you're a partner in EF as well, and working with a number of EF companies as well. So tell me about that little chapter and how it came about.
So I think I remember when I was in high school, we had this kind of program, young entrepreneurs. And I looked at it and I said, what is this boring thing? I mean, what is even an entrepreneur? I remember I really dismissed it. It looked to me very uninteresting and weird thing to do. I was always like, you go to a big company or you go to university. I never even thought about it. And the first time that I came across that sort of enterprise was while I was at McKinsey, or even before. A friend of mine, Steve Jedi, he had a company called Video Juicer. He was an entrepreneur, somebody I met in South America. It's also a great story. I met him on a remote beach playing chess, and one day he came to me and said, I have to tell you something. I said, what? I just proposed to my girlfriend. We're getting married, and I was the only person there, so he had to share it with me, so we became very close. So coming back to the UK a couple of years after that, I met him, and he told me, listen, I have this startup, I need your advice, help me, because you work for McKinsey. It was the first time I got very interested in startups and helping them, and what is a startup. I think then the Groupon experience made it more interesting, and I kind of got into that. And while at Groupon, one of the people in my team, David Edler, I'm always grateful for him. He told me, "Listen, two friends of mine are doing something over the weekend. They need somebody to help them. Would you mind coming?" I told him, "Okay, David, what are you talking about?" And he said, "No, it's something, and it's called the Innovation Warehouse. Two friends from McKinsey. They need judges for a hackathon." I was single, I was bored, and I said, sure, I'll go to the Innovation Warehouse. And that was Matt and Alice. doing the first ever EF cohort. I just ended up there judging some of the business ideas that the first cohort ever had. And it's kind of one thing led to another. I started to be interested in the nature of money, bumped into crypto. So it all came together, and I was very keen to become an investor. Again, not sure exactly why. It was just kind of a passion. I can tell you about the first angel investment that I've made, and maybe that's I think it's a good story. It's maybe 2014, 2013. I went to Reclaim, an exhibition, crypto exhibition, and I saw this interesting. I don't want to name names. So interesting guy standing there and selling a crypto point of sale. And I said, "Great, that's the future. I want to be involved." And I told him, "Okay, let's talk." And we start talking. And I get to know him, and I decided to invest half of my money in this business. I didn't have much money, so it wasn't a lot. And shook hands a couple of weeks after, and I invested half of my money, and I became a shareholder of this company. By and large, I've never heard from him again. It was a disaster, and I hope he's doing well. But I think I've learned a lot since that first investment about, yeah.
So how soon did you find out that was half your capital gone? Like that investment wasn't going to work out?
I knew. Look. So I'm also doing a couple of shortcuts, but I got also interested in investments after business school, and I read The Intelligent Investor, and I read about Buffett, and at first I thought I'm interested in the public markets. Investments or investing in a couple of public equities and kind of. So I knew a little bit about investment, and when I invested in this business, the point of sale business, I knew it's half of my money, and I knew I may lose it. I knew it's fine. So it wasn't that I really think I'm buying gold or kind of, I don't know, IBM bonds. I knew it's risky. But it was evident after a couple of months that it doesn't go anywhere, and they're not very attentive, and yeah.
But you have made a number of successful investments, just for the listeners who are out there. So, what interested you about the crypto space early on? Because you were early and you were curious and you were interested. Do you remember sort of what was going on in your head about?
Yeah, of course. So I was sitting on the same beach that I met this English founder. It's called Playa Blanca. If you ever have a chance, go to this beach. It's a beautiful place in the north of Colombia. And I met this Aussie guy, and he told me it's very hard to travel the world these days. I said, why? He said, because the Aussie dollar is very weak. I was like thinking to myself, surely if you work hard, you make money, you can travel. What's the connection if the Aussie dollar is weak or strong? And I started to be very fascinated about the whole thing of currencies. What is a currency? What is money? Why Aussie dollar is different from British pound and US dollar, and what gives money the purchasing power it has. And I started to be very obsessed with that. And the more I read about it, the more I learned about it, the more I realized that the whole banking system is a little bit rigged and overcomplicated. And in 2011, I decided to start a business called Mobile Cash. What is Mobile Cash? It's just like I said, why do you even need a bank? Just you take a mobile, let's put a ledger. Let's do it. And actually, a lot of people doing it now. Revolut is a fantastic example. So I just think they do, but so I had kind of a spec, and I sent it to a studio, and they were supposed to design the MVP for me. So that's how I kind of got into the whole thing. And then Taboola came, so I left and I joined Taboola instead of starting Mobile Cash. And while reading about the subject, I came across Bitcoin. And I said, that blew my mind. Everybody that at that time heard about it have the same story. They read the Satoshi Nakamoto paper, and then for 2 weeks they couldn't sleep, just read about the whole thing and read, and it's exactly what happened to me. Yeah.
And what are you most excited about in the space for sort of the coming years? Obviously, some people are saying that it's the blockchain technology that Bitcoin's built on that's going to lead to lots of other exciting innovations in different spaces. Of course, the currency is still fascinating for a lot of people. How do you now look at the space after all of the hype that's happened in the last sort of like 12 to 18 months, especially?
We are in the midst of a crazy bubble. And let's put some order into the whole thing in my view. First of all, the attempt to decouple blockchain and Bitcoin is ignorance. It's in my view. So people that say it's not about the Bitcoin, it's about blockchain. They say it because they don't understand what is Bitcoin, what is blockchain, what is money. You cannot separate the two things. You cannot say that Bitcoin is irrelevant, blockchain is the big thing. Just a rant that I had to take out. We can cut it in the edit room. So first of all, Bitcoin is gold. It's a digital gold. I'm not excited about it because it's not that interesting. And nothing too exciting going to come up out of it. It will innovate base money. Base money used to be gold, now it's central bank money. On top of the base money, you have 97% of the money supply, which is actually credit. The 97% of credit won't change. The layer of base, which is produced by central banks, will probably become Bitcoin or could become Bitcoin. So Bitcoin could be very valuable, but I don't know if it's exciting. Bitcoin won't solve world problem, and Bitcoin won't be the thing you're going to buy cappuccino with at Starbucks. It's going to be gold, reserve currency, base currency. There's 8 trillion of gold in the world, which is not for jewelry or industrial applications. Nobody's seeing it, nobody's using it. It's in the coffers of the Bank of England, the Bank of India, the German bank, Fort Knox. That's Bitcoin. So I'm not excited about it, but it's there. Then the blockchain technology or the Ethereum platform, all those kind of distributed ledgers, I think they present very, very interesting opportunities to facilitate ownership of intangible assets. I don't think you need blockchain to solve a food supply chain or diamonds industry, but wherever you have intangible assets, like money, that's obviously Bitcoin, but credit, bonds, equities, ownership of land, everything that it could be double spend, could be solved. Vote, and identity, your vote. And blockchain could solve the fact that you cannot vote twice. So the thing that's going to come there really, really excites me, really to facilitate and streamline the financial system, maybe the government system, democracy. I see a lot of opportunity there. I think it's going to come when the dust is going to settle, the current ICO utility token mambo jumbo going to bust. And through those kind of ruins, I think that in the next 10, 20 years, we're going to see very, very interesting new application to make our life better in terms of identity, privacy, and streamlining the financial system.
So you're taking the very long-term view on the space then?
Oh, absolutely. It's a 20 to 50 year endeavor. It's very hard. Money is something very emotional. The identity is something very emotional. Government is something very emotional. So you drawn to stability. You drawn to things that are secure. Why do you think the Bank of England has this huge building? There's nothing inside, right? There's nothing inside. I don't think the gold is even there. But it gives you. Why the Supreme Court as such a big building, or government as big building, to give people the feeling that it's stable. It's hard to disrupt it the same way you disrupt other industries. So it's a very long-term thing, but that's what excites me. That's what I'm looking for. And I think that we have one company at EF that is doing something on that vein. Apologies for the promotion here, but Credit Mint, I think, is doing something very interesting, putting syndicated loans on the Ethereum or any other distributed blockchain.
Speaking of companies that you've invested in the fireside chat we had a couple of weeks ago, a lot of people were asking you questions about specific industries. Nadav, are you interested in this? Are you interested in that? And you sort of said that really, in large part, it depends. But you're looking for certain qualities in founders and people. Tell me what you look for in a potential investment.
I can tell you what I've seen in the past in people that I invested either my money or my time in. I'm not sure it's going to be exactly the next one. I think that real contrarian early stage investor has to be very open-minded. The previous company is not going to look like the next company, and I would be foolish to try to box it. So I'm very open, I'm very curious, I'm interested in stuff, and I know when I see it, I know it. So to speak. I think it's a lot of early stage investment. It's art. and not necessarily a science, in my view. Other people disagree. I think that the whole EF thing is science versus art, but I still think it's art. So I've seen a couple of things. First of all, I think there has to be a strong leader. Think about Taboola, Adam Singolda, great founder, super charismatic, people magnet, can definitely attract people to work for him. You have to have it if you want to start a big business and successful business, because it's all about people. Satoshi Nakamoto. I don't know if it's a person, a group, a female, a male, animal, extraterrestrial. Who knows what it is? But there is some charisma there, right? It's a very charismatic leader, even if it does not exist. So this is. I think you have to have it in a successful business. I think the idea should be simple. Very simple. I mean, what is Groupon? It's discount for local businesses. What is EF? Take two people, start a business. What is Taboola? Put distributed machine learning on publishers to give recommendations. It has to be very simple. It has to make sense, and it has to be a little contrarian. Something needs to be hard to grasp. Otherwise, you don't have any edge. If it makes sense and everybody understands it, so it should have been done before. And I think that EF is a great example. It's a place when I feel that I invested most of my time in. How can you take two people that never met each other and start a business? Can we start a business? Nassos, you and I, we never met each other. Can we start a business? People said it's impossible, and I think that's why it's interesting. Or Groupon, can a restaurant give 80% discount? It doesn't make sense. Or does it? Or Taboola, can Guardian put links of Telegraph? Can New York Times put links of the Washington Post? At first you say, no way, but then, so I think those are the four things, kind of a very charismatic leader, simple idea that makes sense, but some sort of a contrarian element. I don't know what's going to be the next one. Hard for me to, I'm looking for the next one. In terms of industries, I'm very excited about everything that's happening, obviously, in crypto, distributed. That's why I feel that I understand as well. So, but I'm not limiting myself to that. I really don't know what's going to be the next big thing.
And so if you follow that logic and you think about the fact that, the next big thing isn't going to look like the big thing that came before it, how do you advise founders then in terms of like their approach to entrepreneurship? Is it about self-awareness and an understanding of their uniqueness, the thing that only they can build, rather than trying to iterate on stuff that's happened in the past? What do what advice do you give to founders around that?
So I have to say that we need to be very specific here, because the advice that we give at TF is for people that want to build huge businesses. Most of businesses are not huge. Most businesses are not unicorns. Most businesses are not venture-backed. Most businesses are businesses. If you want to start a restaurant because that's your passion, go start a restaurant. So don't ask advice from me. So I think you're asking about specifically somebody who wants to build a big unicorn or a big business. And I think from everything that I've seen, that it has to be related to you, what you've done. It's you. It's not the market. It's not looking for the opportunity in the market and close the gap. Because if you saw the gap, somebody else saw the gap, and if you and somebody else saw the gap, other people, why you? And I think the most important question is why you? What do you know? What did you do that gives you this opportunity? Why you? Why are you going to be the person to close this gap? And I think it has to be internal and not external. Also, external is very volatile. Things coming in and out of fashion, markets kind of go up and down, boom and bust. And to build a big business, you have to endure for years, maybe 7, 10, 15 years. So it has to be internal. It has to be internal belief, internal thing that you know, internal passion. Why you? I think that's the most important question. What do you know? What's your skill?